This is a real brief video of how I made my Ruger 1022 M1 Carbine. First up, I'm going to show you how the individual parts disassembled and what I had to do to them. The part that required the most work was obviously the stock, because it's meant for the M1 Carbine. So I had to do a lot of inlaying with the Dremel. I used a sanding drum to take out the material from the inside of the stock. And here you can see the stocks are pretty similar. Well, they obviously are now because I dremeled this one out. Well, what I did is basically started from the back of this original stock and took the dimensions and transferred them to this stock. As you can see, if you flip them over, the bottom of these it's nearly identical. Once again, you start at the back and you work your way forward, measure that distance there, and then move on to your next groove. And you basically copy this stock. And there's lots of material in here you have to Dremel out. It's basically a fit-as-you-go thing. You put the barrel receiver in there and you see what hits, and then you have to remove that, and you end up making an exact copy of this. And then your next step is the inlaying. You want the receiver to actually sit on something. So in this case I used JB Weld. I wrapped the receiver in saran wrap and put a little bit of cooking oil on it so it doesn't stick. And you can see the black stuff right there is the JB Weld. It's on both sides. So I put the barrel receiver in with the saran wrap on it, and I go up from the bottom and I put some JB Weld in there to make a little shelf for it to sit on. And I did the same thing here, right here. I believe this is there's a wooden block under here. I don't remember what thickness it is. But I put the block there. That's the tear down block, or whatever you would call it. The block that the takedown screw rests on. And it's the block, and I covered the block in JB Weld to give it extra strength. And then you can see when I laid it down, it made an exact impression of the takedown area. And then I drilled the hole for the takedown screw at that location. I use the JB Weld as a reference because when you put the JB Weld in there and you put the barrel receiver down, it'll make a mark where the hole is for the takedown screw, and then you basically just drill the hole straight through that mark. Up in front, I actually didn't have to do any modifications at all. This is the right diameter for the barrel. Oh, and going to the back again, I skipped this part. This is the recoil plate. You can see the part where it is shiny. That's where I had to grind off material because it would run into the back of the receiver. So you have to trim that down a bit. I used a bench grinder. Nothing's changed back there. That's all the original hardware. Again, this is just a surplus stock. I believe it's not a collector's item or anything. I think it's actually a reproduction, so I didn't destroy any valuable stuff. The next up would be the handguard. First thing I had to do was widen this area here with sandpaper. You can see I got rid of that tight 90-degree angle, and I had to make it wider there for the wider diameter of the barrel. And then I made a fake charging rod. Just takes up the space so there's no wide gap in there. There's the hole on the other side. Pretty much only had to modify the back half of it. Here's the barrel band. I had to do a lot of cutting and grinding on this. Usually there's a circle that encompasses the barrel right here, but because the Ruger barrel is a different diameter, I had to grind it off. And then you can see all the silver mark right there is where I did all the grinding. I had to make a little bit softer of a groove right there so it didn't catch on the barrel. Next I'm going to show you how it all goes back together. I'm also going to show you how that handguard fits on there. For the most part, it's just the same way you put your Ruger back together normally. tighten your takedown screw. Then we'll move on to the handguard. You can see where that hole was. I made a dovetail blank that fits into where the rear sight was, and I drilled and tapped that first screw, and the screw of course goes through the handguard. So when you put that on top, the band will prevent it from going forward. Then you just run your screw down, and the band holds it down in front, and the screw holds it down in the back, and that's it. And I've got it all back together. One more thing I forgot to cover is the sights. These are Tech Sight aperture sights. You have windage elevation, or you have windage adjustment in the back, and you have elevation adjustment in the front. And you use your basic AR tool to adjust those. It screws up and down. And you have a wheel with a detent there, and that goes back and forth. And these are very good sights. They have a flip up for, I believe it's 25 and 50 yards. Not really sure, but they're very good sights. Even if your stock Ruger needs new sights, I would suggest these. And it's just an overall look. You can see the stock magazine fits in there just fine. Your high capacity magazines will fit in there fine. Provided that you Dremel out this area nicely. And that's a brief explanation of my Ruger. Pretty much gives you M1 Carbine shooting for a lot cheaper than it will cost you to shoot a real M1 Carbine. But the rifle is actually very close in size and weight to the actual M1 Carbine. It's about within an inch of the actual length of the actual M1 Carbine. And that's it. So if you have any comments or questions, just leave them below the video, and thanks for watching.